All right, Book of Ecclesiastes. We talked about it a little bit last week. We have two people, two characters. Does anybody remember what our two characters in the Book of Ecclesiastes is? It's easy. They don't even have names. The author and the preacher, absolutely. And as I was starting to study for Ecclesiastes 1, I was like, let's go. I'm ready. Verse 1, chapter 1, let's do it. I was writing my intro, and I started typing in. I said, it's hard to break Ecclesiastes up because it's a sermon. He's a preacher. He's preaching a sermon. He's telling people a message. And so when you read just one chapter at a time, it's kind of difficult because you read these really, really sad chapters where he's like, everything's worthless, life is meaningless, you shouldn't do any, your toil, all your struggle is going to be for nothing, you're wasting your time, right? All this stuff. And you end the chapter with that, and you're like, hooray, guys, how was that, right? And so I'm writing that, and the Lord just put on my heart and said, well, why don't you just read it? So I know this is a little different. I know it's going to be very different, and trust me, even for me, this is a difficult task. But I think that it's worthwhile for us to sit down and to read the entire message of the preacher. I did look it up. We can do it in 45 minutes at an average talking speed, so we're not going to be here for 2 weeks, all right? But we're going to buckle in. I did make it a little bit more modern, okay? So what I mean by that is I did add visual representations, so it's really a preaching of the 21st century, right, as preachers would do today. So there are going to be slides up on the back that have pictures that kind of illustrate what we're going through. But we're going to go chapter 1, verse 1, to chapter 12, verse 19, straight through, or 29, all the way through Ecclesiastes, reading it this morning. And here's why. Here's why. The preacher is trying to get a message across. And it's good to deep dive. I love deep diving. I love verse by verse. Heck, I love word by word. Taking each word and figuring out why it's there, what's the importance of it, what it means, right? But this preacher is trying to get a whole message. And I think to truly grasp and understand chapter 1, verse 1, well, really verse 2. I think you guys can all understand verse 1 pretty easily. But chapter 1, verse 2, it's good to have the entire context. It's good to understand the entirety of Ecclesiastes. So what we're going to do is we're going to go 1, verse 1, and we're going to read straight through it, all right? Let's pray. Father God, we thank you for this morning. Lord, I thank you for just this opportunity to get to read your word. And Lord, I just lift up this time, Lord. I know it's different. I know it's going to be tough. It's tough for me, Lord, to read this much because I want to dive deep. I want to go straight in and dive deep. And Lord, I'm just praying that you use this time mightily, that we would not get everything out of Ecclesiastes from one reading, but that we focus on the big picture. What is the purpose of Ecclesiastes? Why would you put this in here? And especially when you don't name this preacher, you don't name this author, it's so anonymous, but yet you've determined that this was inspired by you for the purpose of us to study and to know you better. So would we grow in knowledge of who you are? It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Remember, you got a Bible? Perfect. There you go. I highly encourage you to read along with me. Shall we? Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 1. Oh, I do have water. Just making sure. Ecclesiastes 1, verse 1. The words of the preacher, the son of David, king of Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down and hastens to its place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes to the north. Around and around goes the wind. All the streams, to the north, around and around goes, and on its circuit the wind returns. All the streams run to the sea, and the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, they will flow again. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor is the ear filled with hearing. Nor what has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing which it is said, see, this is new? It has already been in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things, yet to be among those who come after. I, the preacher, have been king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I applied my heart to seek and search out by wisdom all that has been done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity. All is striving after the wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be counted. I said in my heart, I have acquired great wisdom, surpassing all who were in Jerusalem before me, and my heart has had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I applied my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. And I perceive that this is also but a striving. Oh my gosh, sorry, my Bible, like that line is like split. Not the ear, nor the striving. What's the end of verse 17 say for?
In the ESV, I applied my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceive that this also is but a striving after wind.
My Bible here is skipping 10 verses. 219, right? 118. There we go. Yeah, they like literally skipped like 30 verses into another chapter. That was weird. And I applied my heart to know all wisdom and to know all madness and folly. And I perceive that this is also but a striving after wind. For in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases in knowledge increases in sorrow. Chapter 2. I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. But behold, this is also vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? I searched with my heart how to cheer my body with wine, my heart still guiding me with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the children of man to do under the heaven for a few days of their life. I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks, and planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which the water of the forests of growing trees, to which the water of the forest of growing trees. I bought male and female slaves, and had slaves who were born in my house. I had also great possessions of herds and flocks, many that were also more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and the treasures of the kings and provinces. I gathered singers, both men and women, and many concubines, the delight of the sons of man. So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also, my wisdom remained with me. And whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toiling, and this was my reward for all my toil. Then I considered all that my hands had done, and the toil I expended in doing it. And behold, all was vanity, and a striving after the wind. And there is nothing to be gained under the sun. So I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man do who comes after the king? Only what has already been done. Then I saw that there is more gain in wisdom than in folly, and that there is more to gain in light than in darkness. The wise person has his eyes in the head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I perceive that the same event happens to all of them. Then I said into my heart, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. Why then have I been very wise? And I said in my heart that this is vanity. For of the wise as of the fool, there is no enduring remembrance. See that in the days to come, all will have been long forgotten. How the wise dies just like the fool. So I've hated life, because what is done under the sun was grievous to me. For all is vanity and striving after the wind. Gentlemen, we're in Ecclesiastes. We're reading straight through the book of Ecclesiastes. Chapter 2, verse 18 says, I hated all my toil in which I toiled under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool? Yet he will be master of all for which I have toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This is also a vanity. So I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toils of my labor under the sun. Because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by somebody who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. What has a man from all the toil and striving of the heart from which he toils beneath the sun? For all his days are full of sorrow, and his works is a vexation. Even in the night his heart does not rest. This also is vanity. There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat, drink, and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat, or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner he has given the business of gathering and collecting, only to be given to one who pleases God. This also is vanity and striving after the wind. No, it won't let me do that. That's cool. For everything there is a season, a time for everything under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek, but also a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silent and a time to speak, a time of love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What gain has the worker from his toil? I have seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity into man's heart. Yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end, I perceive that there is nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also, that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in his toil. This is God's gift to man. I perceive that whatever God does endures for forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken away from it. God has done it, so that people fear before him. That which is, already has been. That which is to be, already has been. And God seeks what has been driven away. Moreover, I saw under the sun that in the place of justice, even there was wickedness. And in the place of righteousness, even there was wickedness. I said in my heart, God will judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time for everything, every matter, and for every work. I said in my heart with regards to the children of man that God is testing them, and that they may see that they themselves are but beasts. For what happens to the children of man and what happens to the beasts is the same. As one dies, so does the other. They all have the same breath. A man has no advantage over the beasts, for all is vanity, and go to one place. All are from the dust, and the dust all return. Who knows whether the spirit of man goes upward and the spirit of the beast goes down into the earth? So I saw that there is nothing better than that man should rejoice in his work, for that is his lot. who can bring him to see what will be after him? We're reading straight through Ecclesiastes. We're just starting chapter 4. Again, I saw all the oppression that was done under the sun, and behold, the tears of the oppressed, and they had no one to comfort them. On the side of their oppressors, there was power, and there was not one to comfort them. And I thought that the dead who were already dead were more fortunate than the living who were still alive. But better than both is he who has not yet been, and has not seen the evil deeds that are done under the sun. Then I saw that all toil, all skin in work comes from a man's envy of his neighbor. This also is vanity and striving after wind. The fool folds his hand and eats his own flesh. Better is a handful of quietness than 2 handfuls of toil and a striving after wind. Again, I saw vanity under the sun. One person who has no other, either son or brother, yet there is no end to all his toil. And his eyes are never satisfied with riches, so that he never asks, for whom am I toiling and depriving myself of pleasure? This also is vanity and an unhappy business. There 2 are better than one, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if 2 lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him. A 3-fold cord is not quickly broken. Better was a poor and wise youth than an old and foolish king, who no longer knew how to take advice. For he went from prison to throne, though in his own kingdom he had been born poor. I saw all the living who move about under the sun, along with that youth who were to stand in the king's place. There is no end to all the people, all whom he led. Yet those who come later will not rejoice in him. Surely this also is vanity and striving after the wind. Chapter 5. Guard your steps when you go into the house of God. To draw near, to listen is better than to offer the sacrifice of fools, for they do not know that they are doing evil. Be not rash with your mouth, nor let your hearts be hasty to utter a word before God. For God is in heaven, and you are on the earth. Therefore, let your words be few, for a dream comes with much busyness, and a fool's voice with many words. When you vow a vow to God, do not delay in paying it, for he has no pleasure in fools. Pay what you vow. It is better that you should not vow than that you should vow and not pay. Let not your mouth lead you into sin, and do not say before the messenger that it was a mistake. Why should God be angry at your voice and destroy the work of your hands? For when dreams increase and words grow many, there is vanity. But God is the one you must fear. If you see in a province the oppression of the poor and the violation of justice and rights, do not be amazed at the matter. For the high official is watched by higher, and there are yet higher ones above him. But this is gain for a land in every way, a king committed to cultivated fields. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This is also vanity. When good increases, they increase who eats them. And what advantage has the owner but to see them with his own eyes? Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats a little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. There is a grievous evil that I have seen under the sun, Riches were kept by their owners to his hurt, and the riches were lost in a bad venture. And he is the father of a son, but he is nothing in his hands. He has nothing in his hands. As he came from his mother's womb, he shall go again, naked as he came, and shall take nothing from his toil, that he may carry away in his hands. This is also a grievous evil. Just as he came, so he shall go. And what gain is there to him who toils for the wind? Moreover, all the days he eats in darkness, in much vexation, and sickness, and anger. Behold, what I have seen to be good and fitting is to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil, which one toils under the sun, the few days of his life that God has given him. For this is his lot. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them, and accept his lot and remembrance of his toil. This is the gift of God. For he will not much remember the days of his life, because God kept him occupied with the joys of his heart. Chapter 6. There is an evil that I have seen under the sun. It lies heavy on mankind. A man to whom God gives wealth, possessions, and honor, so that he lacks nothing and all that he desires. Yet God does not give him power to enjoy them, but a stranger enjoys them. This is vanity. It is a grievous evil. If a man's father 100 children and lives many years, so that the days of his years are many, but his soul is not satisfied with life's good things, and he also has no burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. For it comes in vanity and goes in darkness. And in darkness its name is covered. Moreover, it has not seen the sun or known anything, yet it finds rest rather than he. Even though he should live 1,000 years twice over, yet enjoy no good, do not all go to the same place? All the toil of a man is for his youth, yet his appetite is not satisfied. For what advantage has the wise man over the fool? And what does the poor man have who knows how to conduct himself before the living? Better is the sight of the eyes than wandering of the appetite. This also is vanity and striving after the wind. Whatever has come to be has already been named, and it knows what it is, and that he is not able to dispute with one stronger than he. The more words, the more vanity. And what is the advantage to man? For who knows what is good for a man while he lives the few days in his vain life, which passes like a shadow? For who can tell what will be after him under the sun? A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of face the heart is made glad. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. It is better for a man to hear the rebukes of the wise than to hear the song of fools. For as the crackling of the thorns under a pot, so the laughter of fools, this is also vanity. Surely oppression drives the wise into madness, and a bribe corrupts the heart. Better is the end of a thing than its beginning, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Be not quick in your spirit to become angry, for anger lodges in the heart of fools. Say not, why were the former days better than these? For it is not from wisdom that you ask this. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, and an advantage to those who see the sun. For the protection of the wisdom is like the protection of money, And the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of him who has it. Consider the work of God. Who can make straight what he made crooked? In the day of prosperity, be joyful, and in the day of adversity, consider. God has made the one as well as the other, so that man may not find out anything that will be after him. In my vain life, I have seen everything. There is a righteous man who perishes in his righteousness, and there is a wicked man who prolongs his life with evil doing. But not overly righteous. Be not overly righteous, and do not make yourselves too wise. Why should you destroy yourself? Be not overly wicked, neither be a fool. Why should you die before your time? It is good that you should take hold of this, and from that withhold not your hand. For the one who fears God shall come out from both of them. Wisdom gives strength to the wise man more than 10 rulers who are in a city. Surely there is not a righteous man on earth who does good and never sins. Do not take to heart all the things that the people say, lest you hear your servants cursing you. Your heart knows that many times you yourself have cursed others. All this I have tested by wisdom. I said, I will be wise, but it was far from me. That which has been far off and deep, very deep, who can find it out? I turned my heart to know, and to search out, and to seek wisdom, and the scheming of things, and to know the wickedness and folly and foolishness. That is madness. And I find something more bitter than death, the woman whose heart is a snare and nets, and whose hands are fetters. He who pleases God escapes her, but the sinner is taken by her. Behold, this is what I found, says the preacher, while adding one thing to another to find the scheme of all things, which my soul has sought repeatedly, but I have not found. One man among 1,000 I have found, but a woman among all these things I have not found. See, this alone I have found, that God made man upright, but they have sought out many schemes. Who is like the wise? And who knows the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom makes his face shine, and the hardness of his face is changed. I say, keep the king's command because of God's oath to him. Do not be hasty to go from his presence. Do not take your stand in an evil cause, for he does whatever he pleases. For the word of the king is supreme, and who may say to him, what are you doing? Whoever keeps a command will know no evil thing, and the wise heart will know the proper time and the just way. For there is a time and a way for everything. Although man's troubles lie heavy on him, for he does not know what is to be. For who can tell him how it is to be? No man has the power to retain the spirit or power over death, over the day of death. There is no discharge from war, nor will wickedness deliver those who will be given to it. And this I observe while applying my heart to all that is done under the sun. When man has power over man, to his hurt. Then I said, the wicked buried. Then I saw the wicked buried. They used to go in and out of the holy place and were praised in the city where they had done such things. This also is vanity, because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily. The heart of the children of man is not fully set to do evil. Though a sinner does evil 100 times and prolongs his life, yet I know that it will be well with those who fear God, because they fear before him. But it will not be well with the wicked, neither will he prolong his days like a shadow, because he does not fear before God. There is a vanity that takes place on the earth, that the righteous people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the wicked, and there are wicked people to whom it enjoys according to the deeds of the righteous. I said that this is also vanity. And I commended joy, for a man has nothing better under the sun, but to eat and drink and be joyful. For this will go with him in his toil through the days of his life that God has given him under the sun. When I applied my heart to know wisdom and to see the busyness that is done on earth, how neither day nor night do one's eyes see sleep. Then I saw all the work of God, that man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. However much the man toils in seeking, he will not find it out. Even though a wise man claims to know, he cannot find it out. But all this I laid to heart, examining it all, how the righteous and the wise and their deeds are in the hands of God. Whether it is love or hate, man does not know. Both are before him. It is the same for all. Since the same happens to the righteous and the wicked, it is good to the good and to the evil, to clean and to the unclean, to him who sacrifices and him who does not sacrifice. As the good one is, so is the sinner. And he who swears is he who shuns an oath. That is an evil in all that is done under the sun, that the same event happens to all. Also, the heart of the children of the man are full of evil, and madness is in their hearts while they live. After all that, they go to the dead. But he who is joined with all the living has hope. For a living dog is better than a dead lion. For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. And they have no more reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. Their love and their hate and their envy have already perished, and forever they have no more share in all that is done under the sun. Go, eat your bread, drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already approved what you do. Let your garments all be always white. Let not oil be lacking on your head. Enjoy life with the wife whom you love, all the days of your vain life that he has given under the sun, because that is your portion in life, and in your toil at which you toil under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with your might. For there is no work or thought or knowledge of wisdom in Sheol, to where you are going. Again, I saw that under the sun the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor the bread to the wise, nor the riches to the intelligent, nor favor to those with knowledge, but time and chance happen to them all. For man does not know his time. Like fish that are taken in an evil net, and like birds that are caught in a snare. So the children of man are snared at an evil time, when this suddenly falls upon them. I have also seen this example of wisdom under the sun. It seems great to me. There was a little city with few men in it, and a great king came against it and besieged it, building great siege works against it. But there was found in it a poor, a wise man, and he, by his wisdom, delivered the city. Yet no one remembers the poor man. But I say that wisdom is better than might, though the poor man's wisdom is despised, and his words are not heard. The word of the wise, heard in quiet, is better than the shouting of a ruler among fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good. Chapter 10. Dead flies make the perfumer's ointment give off a stench, so that a little folly outweighs wisdom and honor. A wise man's heart inclines him to the right, but a fool's heart to the left. Even when the fool walks on the road, he lacks sense, and he says to everyone that he is a fool. If the anger of the ruler rises against you, do not leave your place, for calmness will lay great offense to rest. There is an evil that I have seen under the sun, as it were an error proceeding from the ruler. Folly is set in many high places, and the rich sit in low places. I have seen slaves on horses, and princes walking on the ground like slaves. He who digs a pit will fall into it, and a serpent will bite him who breaks through a wall. He who quarries stones will be hurt by them, and he who splits logs is endangered by them. If the iron is blunt and one does not sharpen the edge, he must use more strength. But wisdom helps one succeed. If the serpent bites before it is charmed, then there is no advantage to the charmer. The word of a wise mouth wins him favor, but the lips of a fool consume him. The beginning of the words of his mouth is foolishness, and the end of his talk is evil madness. A fool multiplies words, though no man knows how it is to be. And who can tell him what will be after him? The toil of a fool wearies him, for he does not know the way to the city. Woe to you, O land, when your king is a child and your princes feast in the morning. Happy are you, O land, when your king is the son of nobility and your princes feast at the proper time, for strength and not for drunkenness. Through sloth the roof sinks in, and through indolence the house leaks. Bread is made for laughter, and wine gladdens life, and money answers everything. Even in your thoughts do not curse the king, nor in your bedroom curse the rich. For a bird of the air will carry your voice, or some winged creature tell the matter. Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days. Give a portion to 7, or even to 8, for you know not what disaster may happen on the earth. If the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves on the earth. And if a tree falls in the south or in the north, in the place where the tree falls, there it will lie. He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. As you do not know the way the Spirit comes to the bones in the womb of a woman with child, so you do not know the works of God who makes everything. In the morning sow your seed, and at evening withhold your hand. And at the evening withhold not your hand, for you do not know which will prosper, this or that, or whether both alike will be good. Light is sweet and is pleasant on the eyes, pleasant for the eyes to see the sun. So if a person lives for many years, let him rejoice in them all. But let him remember that his days of darkness will be many. All that comes is vanity. Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer in the days of your youth. Walk in all the ways of your heart in the sight of your eyes, but know that for all these things God will bring you into judgment. Remove vexation from your heart and put away pain from your body. For youth and the dawn of life are vanity. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and your youth draw near, which you will say, I have no pleasure in them. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are darkened and the clouds return after the rain, in the day when the keepers of the house tremble and the strong men are bent and the grinders cease because they are few, and those who look in the windows are dimmed, and the doors on the streets are shut, when the sound of the grinding is low, and one rises up at the sound of a bird, and all the daughters of song are brought low. They are afraid also of what is high, and terrors in the way. The almond tree blossoms, the grasshopper drags itself along, and desire fails. Because man is going to his eternal home, and the mourners go about the streets. Before the silver cord is snapped, or the golden bowl is broken, or the pitcher is shattered at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern. And the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. All is vanity. Besides being wise, the preacher also taught people knowledge, weighing, and studying and arranging many proverbs with great care. The preacher sought to find words of delight, and uprightly he wrote them. He wrote words of truth. The words of the wise are like goads, and like nails firmly fixed are the collected sayings. They are given by one shepherd, My son, beware of anything beyond these. Of making many books there is no end, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. The end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God, keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether good or evil. Whew! What a book, right? What a sermon. What a preach. First thoughts. What stuck out to you guys? Whole reading. What stuck out? Any words that stuck out? Any themes that stuck out?
It said something like being sad is better than being
Yeah, mourning is better than gladness. We'll get there with that illustration, right? Because on the one hand, you're like, wait, really? Is it really better to be sad all the time, right? We're going to get to what that illustration really means. It doesn't mean depression is better than happiness. That's not what he's saying here. He's drawing an illustration, but when we get there, it will be beautiful. Yeah, that's a really good one. And you notice that he's drawing all that illustration of all this toil, this struggle, all these sorrows that come from life, right? Raise your hand if you've ever experienced sorrows in your life before. Any kind of sorrow. Yeah, right? Every single one of us. So you guys hear him and you go, yeah, life, and sometimes life it's awful, right? And you didn't do anything. And that's kind of what he's getting at, right? I didn't do anything to deserve that, right? I was driving up to John's house a couple weeks ago, last week. I'm just driving up. My car dies. My power steering just stops working. My radio starts shutting on and off. My dashboard lights up like it's Christmas, right? I didn't do anything. I wasn't like hitting my car, beating it up. I take good care of my car, right? Sometimes life is just like that. And that's what the preacher is getting at here. Man, it's not clear. You would think that if we just did good things, if we just lived godly lives, we'd be the most prosperous, rich people, never dealing with any struggles, right? But it doesn't work that way. So he examines that. Yeah. What other words or themes? Yeah. Well, I like what he says about wealth. You guys remember he's talking about the king and he gathers wealth and he says, man, a king gathers wealth and toils over it, works, only to be given to somebody else who didn't work over it, right? The idea is like an inheritance. Somebody who gets really, really rich and then they leave this inheritance to a child who didn't work for that inheritance. There's a really famous meme, I'm sure you've heard of it, of Donald Trump saying, and my father gave me a loan of $1 million, right? And everybody laughs at that. He said a small loan of $1 million, right? And everybody laughs at that. Why? A small loan? What do you mean? That's like, I would love $1 million, right? Right. But we see that a lot. And what ends up being the overarching theme of somebody who gets that money but didn't work for it? They squander it, right? They tend to blow it on all kinds of things that don't bring, on pleasures, on things that don't bring satisfaction. Yeah. Were there any images or key words that you guys saw throughout the entire, as we read it? There's one big one, or there's really like three big ones, but one image, I think. He uses that term sun a lot, right? Under the sun, toil under the sun. Why do you think? What about under the sun makes, huh? Yeah, so the sun touches everything, right? There's very little on the earth besides the deep depths of the ocean that the sun doesn't touch, and maybe caverns, things like that nature. But the idea is that you and I exist under the sun. What's it like to work under the sun? You guys get this these last 3 days, right? What's it like working under the sun? Oh, it's brutal, right? Right? It's not like enjoyable, like, wow, this is so great. If I wasn't under the sun, this would be awful. No, it's the opposite. It's like, I'm under the sun and this is awful, right? So that's when he's using that imagery of sun, he's talking about, man, it's difficult. Everything under the sun, everywhere that the light touches, it's difficult. It beats you down. It's a struggle, right? What was that key phrase that we talked about It's actually up there, right? Vanity, vanity. Everything is vanity. We talked about last week how the Jewish word is, or the Hebrew word used there is hevel. And vanity means kind of, in this context, means worthlessness. The proper, or maybe the best definition that we really have is enigma. It's a paradox. It doesn't make sense, right? Life should be clear and easy to understand. If I do good, if I act right, if I'm nice to people, if I work hard, I'll be rich, I'll have lots of friends, I'll be famous, right? It should be obvious. But yet, as the preacher said, a good person does good all their life, dies an early death, and an evil person prolongs his life with evil doings. Wait a second, God, what's the deal with that? Right? These are questions. These are questions that the preacher is asking. And what does he come to say at the end? We're not to know. It's not for us to know why God does what he does. Why? They're kings. I love the illustration. It just kind of jumped out to me. You need to obey the king. Why? The king has kings above him, and there are more above. Why? Where is it leading to? We need to obey because eventually that line leads to God. And who are we to question God on what he chooses to do? Right? We don't understand the things of God, not even an inkling. We've got 66 books that are trying to express that to us, and we humanity fail constantly at trying to understand what God's trying to convey to us, right? Vanity. It's vanity. I think it's interesting. The thing that jumps out to me is chapter 1. He doesn't start with vanity is vanity, work and money is toil. He says wisdom, fear of the Lord. Wait a second, what do you mean by that, right? The things of God are vanity? Well, he's not saying it's worthless. That's where the term vanity gets kind of difficult. It's not really worthless. It's an enigma, right? It should just go that if we seek the wisdom of God, and if you take the line of thinking that I take, which I do believe that this is Solomon, the preacher, do you guys remember what Solomon asked God for? God came to Solomon and said, you can have anything. What would you like? What? He didn't ask for wealth. He probably should have. Well, he shouldn't have, but he probably would have as a human. What? He asked for wisdom. So God, and specifically, not just wisdom, but I love what he asked for, to be able to lead knowing good and evil. It's tying back to Genesis. It's tying back to the tree of knowledge of good and evil. He wants to be able to discern in a godly fashion the good and evil, right? And so what he says is that to have that wisdom, it is even vanity. Why? Because he ended up still following the things of his flesh. It didn't necessarily produce all that it was you would expect it to be, right? It didn't produce all of the blessings and success. That's the word I was looking for, right? It's an enigma. He's not saying don't do it. He didn't say don't work. He didn't say stop working, don't ever work. He didn't say don't seek God or fear the Lord or seek his wisdom. He's saying if your trust is in those things to produce something, if your trust is, well, if God makes me wise, I'll be rich, it don't work that way. For some people it does. For others it doesn't. For some the wicked prosper. We know that there's a judgment to come for that, though. He expressed that at the end. What else? What else jumped out at you guys? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's that vanity. Yeah. Think about, for a second, if you were to die tomorrow, not wishing that on any of you, if you were to die tomorrow, how much would you take with you? What would you take with you? Not even the skin on your backs right now would go with you.
Yeah, I think we need to be careful on the life is meaningless. If you take some of the verses one by one, you hear that, but I really like that Taylor read it from start to finish, in that we heard under the sun a lot and the vanity of toil under the sun.
Yep.
There are 3 places he talks about under heaven. And those are what he set out in his purpose originally was to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. And the major verse for under heaven kicks off the seasons of there is a time to toil and a time to rest, a time for all of these different things. And it's not a prescription of what you need to guide of how you individually need to relate to God, so that what you purpose for under the sun has a meaning in heaven, and that is to rejoice in the Lord as we work and toil for what He has given us here, knowing that nothing we do in collecting wealth will be beneficial to us. Even the names on buildings of billionaires will eventually crumble. But what you do and work for joy under heaven will last forever. There are three things that last forever: God, the Word of God, and your soul. So do things that enhance your soul based on the Word of God.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not calling people to depression. Oh, life is meaningless. Don't do anything. Don't have a job. Don't go to college. That's not what we're saying. Don't do your homework. No. That's not what I'm saying at all. That's not what, I shouldn't say what I'm saying. That's not what the preacher is saying at all. Again, he's saying that if the meaning that you find, if you think that the work that you're doing brings some kind of success, first of all, there's no guarantee. Second of all, when things go wrong, what's your hope in? It's got to be in God. But if your hope is in the work that you do, what happens when it doesn't produce? Why did I do all this work? Oh my gosh, it was supposed to get me somewhere. It was supposed to make me somebody. It was supposed to. Then life becomes meaningless. Not in the good way, in the bad way. Then life becomes meaningless. But when we realize that, and there's an interesting part where he says, we realize the good and the bad come from God. Both of them come from God. I like to ask myself two things when troubles, trials, struggles, things hit my life. Is first of all, God, is this your metaphorical 2x4, or quite literal, maybe sometimes 2x4, smacking me on the head saying, hey, get out of that sin, get out of that pride, get out of that anger. You're living you're acting unrighteously. If it's not that, if I seek out wisdom, if I search myself and say it's not that, then guess what? Sometimes life beats us down. Sometimes he's using it to produce that P word that we always hate to pray for, right? Perseverance, patience, right? No, God, don't teach me patience. No, just... Because patience, to be taught patience means that you're probably going to have to go through something that tests your patience, right? Right? Those are great. Those are all great observations, all wonderful observations. Again, I know that was a little overwhelming. The goal of that was not to, all of you guys got Ecclesiastes. I told Lydia my idea. I was like, listen, I got this wild idea. I think we should just read straight through Ecclesiastes. And she goes, you're still going to teach through it afterwards, right? I was like, yeah. Next week we'll start verse 1, chapter 1, and go verse by verse through it. She was like, oh, okay. As long as you're not just like reading it and being like, all right, next book. It's like, no. But hopefully you guys got a big picture. And if you have your Bible, really underline that last star, whatever you got to do, that verse 13 of the last chapter. That's where it's heading towards. Fear God, keep his commandments. He's not saying, be lazy, don't do anything. God's just going to do whatever he wants. Don't worry about it. No, fear God, keep his commandments. For what? That was the whole duty of man, right? Because what's going to happen? There's a judgment coming. And it's not going to matter what clothes you owned. It's not going to matter what job you held. It's not going to matter where you ended up in the world geographically. What's going to matter is, did you fear God and keep his commandments? Cool. Camp? Oh my gosh. We're right there. We're knocking on the doorsteps next week. 2 weeks. No way. Don't tell me it's next week. It's next week. It's next week. If you haven't registered, please register. Hoping to get a couple of you guys to come and participate. Well, you guys are here. It's super restful. So it's going to be a lot of fun. They will. In fact, they built a climbing wall. They built a rock wall. I think I could show you actually here. Oh, this is Lydia's, not mine. Oh, I could do it on here, though. They did this. I was talking to Wes the other day. So those of you guys who have been here, know that's the water. And they spent about $20,000, brought in an excavator, broke up all those stones that everybody was slipping on, broke it all up, and now it's actually a Texas beach. It's really gravel, but it goes straight down into the water, so you don't have to slip on all those, on all that stuff. And then they got a dock that you can jump off of and stuff like that. So the water stuff's going to be nicer. They built a climbing wall, and he said they built a. If you guys have ever seen the first Captain America, I think they built like the flag thing where you try to like climb your way up to the top of it. I think that's what he said he built. He said it's been a lot of fun. The kids who have been there have had a lot of fun doing it. So, so it's going to be a ton of fun if you're able to make it. 5th through the 8th. It's a Wednesday to a Saturday.
Are we taking the van?
Depending on, yes, the church van will be taken. I need this. But depending on how many we have, we might need to take one other vehicle. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. Currently, we only have 5 signed up. So I encourage you guys, if you can, if your parents need to be talking,